All right, friends, we're back for another edition of the most controversial songs of all time, where we will talk through some of the most controversial issues of our time using this framework for reflective practice by Judy Pace. I will cultivate a supportive environment. I'll prepare thoroughly. I will think through my teaching stance, select authentic issues, choose resources and pedagogies, and guide the discussion to help all of us navigate some of the most difficult issues of our time using music as our tool. That's what we'll do. Everyone go through your mom's dresser to get some pearls to clutch. That's what we'll do here. It's time for pearl clutching. The first one we'll look at here, an interesting one, Suicide Solution by Ozzy Osbourne. I think this came out in 1983 or something like that. I vaguely remember this, but I was so young at the time that I barely remember it. I do like this song. So the reason why this was controversial is because a person, unfortunately, did take his own life, and his family blamed Ozzy for it because this song is called Suicide Solution, and they believed that the song was urging you to take your own life as the solution to your problems, which is not what the song was about at all. First of all, Ozzy did not even write the song. I don't think Ozzy writes any of his own music. The song is about alcoholism, and the person who wrote it actually wrote it about Ozzy because at that time, Ozzy was still, you know, partying really hard, abusing drugs and alcohol and stuff. And so it was actually written like basically saying like Ozzy is drinking himself to death. Unfortunately, you know, a kid who was a fan of Ozzy killed himself and the family sued him, and he eventually won the lawsuit. And so I think they sued him for like $6 million or something like that. This is why we need to teach kids media literacy. Well, it's interesting. At that time, this was like, you know, the early to mid 80s. These metal bands were getting blamed for all kinds of bad things. Yeah, like the lyrics here, wine is fine, but whiskey's quicker. Suicide is slow with liquor. Take a bottle, drown your sorrows, then it floods away tomorrow's. Those are the lyrics. And it's so obvious to me what this song is about. And I know this is not going to be a popular opinion, but I actually do think that there was reason for parents to be concerned about their kids listening to some of this stuff, because there was a lot of edgy stuff. And by the context of, you know, the early 80s, you know, if you see a lot of this like crazy satanic imagery, or, you know, these bands like SOD literally has a song called Kill Yourself, which is obviously tongue-in-cheek. It's a joke, but still, if your kid brings home a record with a song called Suicide Solution on it, and then they have another one on a different album called Kill Yourself, I don't know. I think you'd be kind of a bad parent if you weren't concerned about that, right? Like, you'd be kind of dumb if that didn't bother you. Now, that said, it's on you as a parent to do more than just react to the title. If you just read the lyrics, it's glaringly obvious what this song is about. And in fact, I don't know if I'd say this is like a positive message, but it's an anti-alcohol song. So if you just did like the bare minimum effort to look into what this is actually about and talk to your kids about it, I think that might be more productive. And the other thing is that if your kids are into some like fucked up stuff, if your kids are listening to, you know, a song called Kill Yourself, then you probably should ask yourself, why is my kid into this? Usually, I mean, I remember, you know, when I was a little kid, the other kids that were into this stuff, you know, the stoner kids, the burnouts that were into Metallica and Megadeth and Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and stuff, you know, they were kind of troubled kids. Almost all of them came from fucked up homes. You know, their parents were like alcoholics or, you know, mentally ill or whatever. Like, if you were into this stuff back then, I'm not going to say like 100% of the time that you came from a fucked up family, but usually, yeah, metal is the musical choice of the socially inept ones. It's a fact. It's true. And so to me, if my kid is listening to this kind of stuff, that would be my signal to look in the mirror and say, oh, have I failed as a parent? My kid is listening to music about killing yourself. What have I done wrong? Rather than to like get mad at the artist, I think the appropriate reaction is to go, oh shit, this is a little bit of a wake-up call that maybe I need to make some changes as a parent. I know if my son started listening to, you know, that kind of stuff, that would be my reaction. So, you know, it's just interesting that back then we really didn't have those kind of conversations about parenting at all. And so the instant reaction was just to like blame the artist without even really looking into it. So that is Suicide Solution by Ozzy Osbourne from back in the early 80s. Now, speaking of pearl clutching, how about WAP? We got to talk about WAP. You remember this one from, when did this come out? 2020? WAP by Cardi B with Megan Thee Stallion. This is the censored version. It's a good song. Great video, too. Now, this one is interesting because everybody was so mad about it. Like, this basically made everybody angry who was outside the target demographic, which is like basically young women. People in the metal world were mad because basically they get mad at everything Cardi B does. It always makes people angry when I say this, but the fact that they're always angry at this woman of color, and they insist that it's not because she's a woman of color, and yet they continually get extremely angry about this woman of color, is kind of interesting. It's like, I don't hate the fact that she's a woman of color. I just get extremely angry about everything she does. The same people, you know, that will happily listen to fucking Infant Annihilator or Cattle Decapitation or something like that will get furious at Cardi B for writing a song about her pussy or talk about sucking dick. They'll get furious about it. And then, of course, there were the people on the right who were mad about it. Of course, your man Ben Shapiro, his legendary bars here.
I said certified freak. 7 days a week. Wet ass P-word. Make that pull-out game weak.
MC Ben Shapiro on the mic.
You effing with some wet ass P-word. Bring a bucket and a mop for this wet ass P-word.
Great cover.
For this wet ass P-word.
One of the best covers of all time.
Catch a charge. Extra large and extra hard.
What's interesting to me is maybe it's because I've been listening to, you know, rap forever, and I've been listening to, like, I don't know, all kinds of edgy music forever. You know, I've been listening to death metal since 1991, listening to stuff like Gut and the Meat Shits and AC and stuff, you know, 30 years ago. To me, this is so, like, not shocking. I think it's a funny song. I think it's, I understand, like, maybe you, like, roll your eyes. Maybe you think it's, like, dumb. Like, yeah, it's dumb. But it's just, it's very, like, it's genuinely baffling to me that people are, like, actually shocked and offended by this. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. It's supposed to be dumb. It's totally dumb and ridiculous on purpose. And this too, it's not shocking at all. All these guys that are offended should stop watching Pornhub then. Exactly. Let me ask you this. How many of the guys who were offended by Cardi B talking about her pussy have watched porn before? How many of those guys jerked off to porn the same day they made some incel Reddit comment about how offensive and awful this song is? Probably 99.9% of them. That's my guess. I think the concern with this song is how many young girls would be influenced by this, not necessarily the content of it's just reaching adults. I think that's reasonable, but I don't know. I feel like 99% of pop culture now is not a particularly great influence on young people. Why get so upset about this is my point. Out of all the things in the world that are a bad influence on people, you just happen to get really angry about the ones when it's a black woman doing it. You know what I mean? That's the part that I'm more concerned about. Kids can find uncensored porn on Twitter, or they can just go look at fucking Pornhub. So I just think it's weird to be so outraged about this particular song. You know, is it dumb? Absolutely. But I don't know. It seems like a lot of pearl clutching to me from people who are supposedly so hard to offend. And nobody ever cared about violence in the media. That's right. That's right. Okay, I would say probably the most shocking song that I remember in my lifetime is Fuck the Police by NWA from way back in 1988.
Right about now,
which this is when I first started getting into rap.
Ice Cube, take the motherfucking stand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help your black ass? You goddamn right. Fuck the police coming straight from the underground. A young nigga got it bad cause I'm brown.
This was a big, big, big deal. Like, I remember reading about this in Newsweek magazine when I was like 10 or 11 years old. I was reading, they had like a cover story about gangster rap back then. And it was about, it might have been about Eazy-E, but they talked about this. And I was just like, whoa, you know, again, I'm 10 or 11 years old and like, what the fuck is this? So I went out and I got a copy of Eazy-E's album, Easy Does It. And that was like the thing that got me to like fall in love with rap. I still wear, you know, like Lakers and Raiders hats because these guys wore them back in the day. It was a huge, huge, huge deal when it dropped. And it's a really catchy song too. I think Ice Cube wrote this. I believe he wrote most of the NWA stuff. He is a lyrical genius. It's a catchy song. This was the first time that anybody had heard people talk about the police like this. Like this kind of, you know, attitude towards the police back then was just absolutely unheard of. This was like an era in which, you know, police were heroes, which it's like basically, again, like opposite world of today where everyone hates cops and it's like the last job you would ever want if you want people to like you. Yeah, people didn't really say the N-word or had not heard the N-word back then either. And people were very, very upset about this. However, just like with body count, I think it did start a conversation that needed to be had because at this time, basically nobody was aware of police brutality as an issue. And in LA back then, it was a big deal. For example, a couple years after this, there was like the Rampart scandal where it came out that essentially there was this part of town, part of LA called Rampart District. And the cops there were basically acting like a gang, like shaking people down and robbing them and selling drugs and stuff like that. You know, it was a real issue back then and it needed to be discussed. And I think that they deserve a lot of credit for bringing that up. Now, what I do think is interesting is how many people give them a total pass on being complete shitbags. Like, these guys were not good people. They had a lot of just really fucked up lyrics. This song, Find 'Em, Fuck 'Em, and Flee, is, well, I'm not going to read it, but not exactly enlightened. Bitch is a bitch is the other one. Bitch, you're lucky I haven't had a drink. You know, like basically threatening that he, yeah, or from the Eazy-E one, yeah, reach back like a pimp and smack the hoe. Like, these were not enlightened people. They're not like good dudes. They're just like, basically they had a valid point as far as fuck the police, but it's interesting that they've been like canonized as these kind of like woke heroes, and they're definitely not woke in the slightest. You've never heard them hailed as woke heroes? Oh, they are. Trust me. I mean, I used to work at this company, Silicon Valley company, that's like very woke, and they would have, you know, Tupac and NWA lyrics and stuff up on the wall. I'm like, why do you have the lyrics of a convicted sex offender on the fucking wall here? This is fucked up. It's just kind of interesting that, you know, they get a pass on all the other fucked up things that they said. So, you know, I think this is a case of where them being kind of not great people and saying and doing a lot of other fucked up things, you know, humans are complex. It's not like they're either angels or demons. Like they made some valid points. They said a lot of other things that were probably not that cool. And, you know, I think it's important to be a good critical thinker and to be able to evaluate the things that people say and take them on their own merits. And the fact that someone said one thing that was right doesn't mean everything else they said was right. If they say one thing that's wrong, that doesn't mean everything that they said was wrong. You know, people are multifaceted and complex, and I think NWA is a great example of that. Speaking of controversial rappers, this was a pretty big one. Okay, Kanye West has this song called Famous, which is about Taylor Swift. Kind of interesting.
For all my Southside niggas
right here.
That know me best, I feel like me and Taylor might still have sex. Why? I made that bitch famous.
And I can't play you the real music video for this because it's him laying in bed naked with a girl who looks a whole lot like Taylor Swift. It sounds like an AI song. Oh, it does sound like an AI song, but it's not. This is where he says that he made that bitch famous, referring to Taylor Swift. Meaning, what he's talking about is this legendary moment
giving me a chance to
from the 2009 VMAs.
Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Now, this is back when we thought Kanye West was just quirky, right? Back when we thought he was, oh, Kanye just being Kanye. Years later, fast forward, what, 14 years or something, and we've got this. When Kanye is on Alex Jones' show wearing a ski mask and drinking a Yoo-hoo and says that Hitler was a cool guy.
Do you know about Hitler and His Coming Man?
No, I don't know about that. But what we have to.
Well, I just think you should not want to be Hitler's coming man.
I didn't say I was. I don't really care that much about Hitler. I love him. Seems like
you just do it as a way to like troll.
No, he seems like a cool guy. You know, it's like he Hitler.
He seems like a cool guy. We used to think that Kanye was just a quirky, lovable genius. When he interrupted Taylor Swift, and then he made this song where he said that he made Taylor Swift famous and like had this weird line about girls that got dick from Kanye West, and we're like, I don't know, Kanye, you're starting to get a little bit weird, but okay, I'm still with you, I guess. And then he goes on Alex Jones and says Hitler's a cool guy, and you're like, all right, I think you lost me with that one. The beginning of the end for Kanye. I don't have a ton to say about that one, but just kind of an example of, like, you know, when you see the threads kind of unraveling. You know, sometimes the person is not a lovable genius; they're actually just insane. Okay, a very controversial song. I remember this one from back in the day, "One in a Million" by Guns N' Roses. This is from their EP Lies. That was the follow-up to their first album, Appetite for Destruction. This EP, by the way, is fucking great. I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12 when this came out. And I remember listening to this. I was in 6th grade, I think. I remember listening to this and kind of be like, oh, I mean, even back then, it was a bit much. First, there's this line.
Police and niggas. That's right. Get out of my way.
Now, I think the idea behind this song is that he's supposed to be writing from the character perspective of some sort of like ignorant, you know, bigot or something like that, right? He's like, these aren't the things that I think. These are just like the things that the character in this song thinks. That's like sort of the fig leaf. And then there's this other line here.
Immigrants and faggots, they make no sense to me.
Is this Cartman? It does sound like Cartman. Axl Rose is the prime example of a guy who thought he was being provocative, but actually was just aggressively ignorant. You know, it's one of these things where you're like, okay, I understand that sometimes, you know, you might write a song or a movie script or something like that from the perspective of a character who is an ignorant moron. I get that. And I understand edgy, tongue-in-cheek humor and stuff like that. But there's times where it's like, it seemed like you really enjoyed saying that word. You know what I mean? And it's not like Axl Rose was like some kind of like really intelligent, thoughtful, nuanced guy that was known for having great political commentary or something like that. Yeah, he's been practicing saying it for years before this track. Exactly. Like Quentin Tarantino. How many times does he say the N-word in Django Unchained? 50 times or something. And like, he's really going for it. And he says it in Pulp Fiction too. And there's all the stuff with, you know, him doing all the foot stuff in his movies too. Right? And you're like, geez, why do you keep writing these characters where you get to say, you have an excuse to say the N-word and lick someone's feet, right? And, you know, with Guns N' Roses, it's like, nobody was like, Axl Rose, maybe don't put out this song. You know, it's a little bit weird. And I don't know that he was making any kind of like great political statement or anything either. It's like, okay, yeah, we know that there's these kind of like ignorant people out in the world, are you really making any kind of statement by just saying this word in a song, or are you just doing it because you kind of wanted to say this word? That's my question. People were pretty upset about this, and you know, probably for good reason. Okay, last one is Blurred Lines, the Robin Thicke song from way back in 2013. Do you guys remember this?
Everybody get up.
Now, I remember this song at the time. I had no idea that this song was like, I don't know, sketchy at all at the time. So I just thought it was a really catchy song. I didn't really ever pay attention to the lyrics. I never saw the video. This song was very controversial. If you actually listen to the lyrics, you'll understand why. It's about blurring the lines of consent. It pretty much is. The lyrics are that bad, yes. Ugh. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I remember at the time, like I said, I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, oh, this is a catchy song. I saw that people were upset about it, and they were saying that this is, you know, promoting basically abusive behavior towards women. And I was like, oh, come on, really? And then I read the lyrics and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. And the music video is pretty sketchy too. I'm not going to show it to you because I don't want to get TOS'd. But the girls in this video are like basically almost naked, and the guys are kind of grabbing and being weird with them and stuff like that. It's pretty weird. It's pretty weird. They will tell you, like Robin Thicke says that it was like supposed to be self-parody. Yeah, here, like he says, hit me up when you pass through. I'll give you something big enough to tear your ass in two. Ugh, it's like the kind of thing Attila would say for a joke. Only, you know, they're saying that it's a joke. But again, it's like, well, is that really a joke? It's sort of like the Guns N' Roses thing. It's like, oh, I'm just playing the character of this like disgusting creep that I'm only ironically catcalling you. It's pretty weird. So I actually think this is one of the examples of a lot of the time when there's pearl clutching, you're like, oh, come on, really? This is nothing to get upset about. 99 times out of 100, when I look into it, it's like, oh, what's the big deal? This is an example of when you look into it and you're like, yeah, this is pretty bad. There's also a lawsuit about this, which was kind of controversial, where Marvin Gaye's estate sued them for stealing the vibe, basically. So this is Blurred Lines first, and then they'll play the Marvin Gaye song after it. So this is the Marvin Gaye song. So basically, Marvin Gaye's estate sued them and won for basically stealing the vibe. It doesn't use the same melody. It doesn't even use the exact same rhythm. It's just like sounds like the Marvin Gaye song. Obviously, it is inspired by that, but it's not. It doesn't sample it. It doesn't steal the melody. But they won on the grounds that whatever, like you stole our vibe. Vibe checked in a civil court of law. Personally, I disagree with that. I think it's actually a really terrible precedent to set, that you can sue somebody for millions of dollars for stealing your vibe. But that's what the court said, and it's hard to feel bad for Robin Thicke, given that yeah, some of the sketchiest lyrics you're going to find in a mainstream pop song, which justifiably got him in some hot water. I would say people were upset for good reason. So there it is, people. That does it for this edition of the most controversial songs of all time. Join us next time for another look at some songs that made the people clutch their pearls.
Wet ass P word. Make that pull-out game weak.